Hello. Let me check in with I finished the Tndr Sht by Colette, and maybe just a little listing of what my various plans are, what I've done so far in ways of research for doing a bunch of short videos just on one single story by Colette. So first, yes, I have I finished the story, which was like, oh, this is the story of an older man at the time of when it takes place. He's looking back at it, but when the actual meat of the story happens, he's like in his 50s, and he is doing all his darndest to try and seduce a kind of a peasant slash middle class, not middle class, but it's peasant. It's kind of uncertain, kind of how much parentage Louisette, the farm girl that takes his fancy, who is 16, 15, and that he has got a total yearning for little girls, as he says, and does all sorts of stuff to try and seduce Louisette, trying to give her stuff, which she all refuses quite angrily, which is something to think about in itself. Um, this is a story with gorgeous language, of somebody who is telling a story who he admits to the person who he's talking to, which seems to be kind of a stand-in for Colette, shares Colette's history, that like he isn't ashamed of it. He's like, I'm not going to look down or be thing that I like the stuff. Weren't you, narrator who's listening to this, didn't you fall in love with an old man in his 40s who looked even older, and indeed marry him, which is what happened with her and Willie, her Colette's first husband, when she was quite young. Um, so it's interesting. The narrator is like, yeah, this happened to me. I was a Louisette. And you're kind of going along in the story thinking like, oh, and they indeed seem to get into at least heavy petting. He says that he doesn't basically he doesn't force any of his Tndr Shts to produce yet more Tndr Shts, which is, I guess, a way of saying he doesn't impregnate them, which, as when he gets to a confrontation with the mother, it's like, yeah, that's you're saying like that this is all like a good thing, that you should be congratulated for doing this. But yeah, that's what happens is he ends up back at Louisette's house where the mother catches them, and there is this reversal, because I'm thinking, like, as we're going along in the story, it's like, oh great, this is like a Humbert sort of situation. But um yeah, unlike in Nabokov's Lolita, the mother is not an idiot, and indeed quickly turns the tables on him, and he his the Louisette takes her side, and it's like, should we chase him, take a run at him? At which point he runs. He is this ridiculous, pathetic figure who runs, and they throw rocks at him, and he ends the story saying that this totally put him off of little girls, which is like, oh, so it had a happy ending that way. That became shut to him. This experience was so traumatizing to the poor little darling, Albin, the name of the fellow, that he lost his taste for little girls. Now, there's some implications that the mother knew that she was having some kind of assignations. She is definitely, it's like, holy crap, look at him. Like, she forces her daughter to look at him. He is the same age as your father. He is the same age as your father. And kind of look at those gray hairs. Look at all, like, makes her daughter look at this guy. And you can't, I just can't help but thinking this is Colette kind of talking to a younger self. It's like, look at this guy. Look at what happened to you. In that. So it's in some ways it's Lolita, but written by Dolores versus being written by a very. It's not, even though it's told in the voice of the predator. It's told to a former Lolita, a former object, a former prey object of this thing. And I mean, he does talk about these girls being prey. So yeah, it's I was worried that it was going to be a ho 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 little girls kind of story, and I mean, it's got a very sensuous. I mean, it gets you deep into that in the voice of Albin, the very kind of sensuous nature of things. It just everything's vibrating. In a very seductive sort of way, which is like, I don't want to be seduced this way. I don't want to be seduced into being totally in this guy's head. But I think that's maybe more you pulling the reader in, and then going, ha, you also are like this, and this is what your fate should be as well. So, it's a good first reading. I have in preparations to kind of try and pull things apart and really look at things deeply. I photocopied the 40 pages, two pages on one thing. I photocopied that so I can kind of go through and do kind of a textual thing. So my ideas for all these short videos are, one is sort of like just an overview of the Tndr Sht, sort of a content warning, trying to kind of put the context of where it arrives in Colette's work. Another video, just sort of the biography of Colette, her dates, marriage to Willie, being a dance hall actress, mime, getting into the academy, surviving World War II with a Jewish husband, and that seems to have been a fairly morally, but she was definitely a survivor. Her bisexuality, and just her general contributions to lit. This may end up being a gigantic video, which is I'll try and make everything as doing. I had the idea of like, I think it's probably from Matt, is like doing the covers of books, and this actually does have the name of the woman who designed the covers on the back, who apparently was big into the Barbara Pym book covers, very distinctive book covers, and I found an article discussing that. So that's another thing. Yeah, I was thinking about doing like a video that's specifically kind of the Tndr Sht and Lolita, with especially kind of the difference in mothers of the two books. There's the idea of the Colette narrator and autofiction in general. Doing some like going deeper to like the sentences from the Tndr Sht, some of the similes that Colette uses, and an idea of kind of the beauty of the body, which I'll have to look up. I've listed like Albin Chavrat, Louisette's mother, as the main figures. I don't know if I will do a video on each one of them. I'll see how it goes. And then Antonia White, who is the translator of the work, who, just going by her Wikipedia page, is got kind of a rather interesting biography herself. So I thought of looking at her, and just a quick video on her and her contribution to the Colette oeuvre in English. So yeah, those are my thoughts. The plan is to hopefully get a first video out on the Tndr Sht out on Friday, which is the 10th, and then hopefully they'll pick up speed from there. But I've got a lot of projects going, so I will see. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.